Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is J.R. Rodriguez, the Assistant Plant Manager at HB Specialty Foods. This company is committed to delivering superior food solutions for the future, offering services across food processing and supply chain management. Their facilities have earned top safety ratings, and they continue to grow through innovation and a focus on high-quality standards. Jose has an extensive background in food production, manufacturing, and maintenance. He graduated magna cum laude with an Associate of Applied Science from the College of Western Idaho, specializing in welding and metal fabrication. Before joining HB Specialty Foods in 2022, he held leadership roles at Fresca Mexican Foods and gained hands-on experience in fabrication and maintenance. Today, he uses this expertise to maintain high production standards and drive efficiency at HB. He's also dedicated to improving processes and delivering quality results. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. One recent client was able to add over $900 per employee per year in extra cash flow by implementing one of our innovative programs. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefits.com. All right. Back to our guest today, the Assistant Plant Manager, HB Specialty Foods, J.R. Rodriguez. I appreciate you making the time to share your story today.
Thank you, sir.
So, J.R., you earned a degree in welding and metal fabrication, and then, as I understand it, you applied those skills at Mike's Metal Fab and United Metals Recycling for a few years. I'm curious, what first drew you into the field of welding?
So, actually, back in high school, I did some welding shop classes. It really kind of appealed to me. I find welding in general to be very calming for me. Just being under a hood, kind of staring into a puddle, doing some things. I also, as we spoke about a little bit before, my dad was a very hardworking guy, so I was very driven to kind of do something with my hands and be able to create something from nothing.
I'm curious about, say more about the sort of how you find welding to be soothing. Is it sort of just this like total focus, like kind of shutting out the rest of the world and like, I'm right here.
It definitely, for me is able to kind of get me to hyper focus on the moment, kind of what I'm doing, and kind of drown everything out, and it's almost peaceful for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I interviewed somebody a few weeks back that works in the asphalt industry, and he explained sort of not the process that they do on the road with laying the asphalt, but what they do inside of the factory as something very similar. He finds himself, and a lot of his coworkers find themselves in this zone of just like complete and total focus on what they're doing. And they're working so hard, but at the end of an 8, 10, 12-hour shift, they feel amazing. Yeah. Is it kind of similar for you?
Very similar, similar. So and that's kind of why I was drawn to the maintenance side of things. It's because I have kind of just working with equipment is kind of the same hyper focus, trying to figure something out.
And I was going to ask, how did that transition from welding to food manufacturing first come about?
So I was at a company doing some general maintenance on heavy equipment, and was not necessarily in a field that I enjoyed very much. I just kind of started looking. This position kind of came open, so I decided to apply, and I was very intrigued by it because actually growing up, my dad worked at a tortilla factory in Fresca Mexican Foods. They make tortillas. So I kind of had a background in tortillas and understood the process, understood some of the equipment, and thought, I could probably do a pretty good job here. So I applied and did maintenance there for quite a while before we kind of transitioned into other needs.
And how did the opportunity specifically at HB Specialty Foods happen?
So I happened to meet a really good gentleman by the name of David Kleiss at Fresca, who, for all intents and purposes, is one of my mentors. The guy is amazing. I've kind of learned a lot from him. Um, he started not long after I did at Fresca, and we kind of, you know, uh, grew a pretty good bond. He was able to kind of see something in me to help me transition into kind of some of the leadership stuff at Fresca. And then he decided to leave for other opportunities and ended up here, which was a company he had worked at previously. Long story short, he decided to, go elsewhere and move out of state and, um, basically recruited me out of Fresca over here and um, sold me on the company and the people and kind of the culture here.
And what had you been doing specifically at Fresca before you made the move?
So, at the end of my kind of tenure there, I was basically the title was plant manager, but I was essentially a production manager for kind of day shift operations, running everything on the production side of things. Looking at day-to-day operations, hiring, firing, kind of all the stuff that leaders do day in, day out, making sure that things are optimized, making sure that, numbers are good and that people are happy.
And what was it about HB that you were sort of hooked on?
The culture here is it's very family oriented. The key difference for me between kind of what I was doing and what I am doing is I'm able to focus more on my family, even though um, I'm in the similar position here where I do a lot of the day to day and deal with a lot of the operations. But at Fresca, I was never kind of in the moment, even when I was at home, because I was always worried about work. Um, and it takes a toll on you. I was working a lot of hours. I was starting to see some, health things from it, and decided that it was time to make a change because I wanted to be there. I look back and I can say that I don't really remember my kids being uber little because I was working so much. So I kind of missed out on them being babies and some of those things. So I craved that. I wanted to be somewhere where I could, focus on home as much as I focus on work, still be able to feel like I'm accomplishing something at work. Um, and that's essentially what sold me on this was, when we initially talked, he said, it's not going to be the 90, 100 hours a week that you're working right now. You're going to be able to kind of, we got a good team in place. Um, Everybody kind of knows what they need to do. Everybody handles their position, and you guys are all just kind of trying to build towards something better. And you'll be able to have that family time that you're missing.
That's really cool. Explain to us what, maybe first a little bit of the history of HB, and then what it is that you guys are doing there today.
So they've been around since 1994. We just celebrated our 30th anniversary last year. The original owner is still, with the company. He developed one of the first coating systems for French fries. A lot of people don't know that there are certain things that go on French fries when they're mass produced to keep them crispy and not kind of going bad and some of those things. So he developed that back in the 90s.
Some kind of
And then,
coating that gets applied to the French
yeah,
fry.
yeah, like
Okay.
like like a just a clear coating that kind of sprays on French fries, like a bat. And then just kind of from that develop, to where are at today. We're a company now that we still, our big kind of driving force right now is still the potato industry. We still do a lot of coatings and things for fries. If you've ever had a French fry, I'm sure you've probably had one of our coatings.
Okay.
We do, panko bread for various companies to put on, uh, protein such as fish and chicken and some of those things. Various batters for appetizers and things. We're essentially an ingredient company for other. final processing, but a lot of our coatings go on a lot of the food that people eat.
So that's what you guys are known for is coatings,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
food coatings. And so you're not the one that's applying the coating to the potatoes or the French fries. You're the one that's selling the coating to the company that
Yeah,
applies it.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
They apply it to their own foods. And
yeah.
so I don't know if it's trade secret, but like what is in a typical potato coating that helps to keep it fresh, makes it crunchy?
It's various things. There's flours and starches and things. I mean, it's nothing too crazy, but can't give away all of our secrets.
Fair enough. All right. I had to ask, though. I had to
Right,
try.
right. Absolutely, absolutely.
So clearly, I'm guessing you guys have got competitors in this space, but what sets you apart from them? What do you guys do that's different and special?
We are extremely relationship driven. We really try and maintain good relationships with everyone we work with. We try and make sure that we are adding value to what we are trying to sell them. I mean, we're not just selling them a product. We are going from, development all the way through final process. We're bending over backwards to ensure that they have what they need when they need it. Sometimes it creates a little stress on our end, but um, we do everything in our power to ensure that the customer is our main focus.
And I don't want you to give me any customer names, but I'm curious to understand sort of the profile of your customer. Would it be like a McDonald's or Burger King, like a fast food restaurant? Would it be like the bags of frozen French fry companies that I buy in the freezer section?
So kind of all of that under the sun. We kind of do a little bit of all.
Okay. And what are some examples of other types of coatings? You mentioned sort of the panko. We got the French fry coatings. Like, what are
Yeah,
some other?
we do some batters that go on proteins and things. Different kind of chicken batters that end up on certain fast food type chicken sandwiches and things.
HB Specialty Foods emphasizes superior solutions for the future of food. Kind of curious from your operations perspective, what unique or innovative processes is the company spearheading to kind of stay ahead of those industry demands?
We're constantly looking at innovation. We're looking at new product lines, new things that are kind of coming down industry wide to ensure that we have whatever solution is needed for the customer coming up. Recently we've got some big projects going on at some of our other sites to kind of move our business a little bit in a direction that is more in line with what our customers are needing, as opposed to um, what we're currently doing. But we're constantly looking at what we can do to add value, like I said, to our customers.
Can you say more about the types of things that you're moving towards that the customers are asking for?
Just various. We're looking at things like obviously a lot of the foods that we are currently producing and batters that we're currently producing are fried. We've moved away from, we've tried to innovate and do some things so that people are able to air fry and do some of those things. Um, there are, we're looking at, kind of the trends in removing gluten from some of our products, making sure that we're able to stay up with some of the organic things that are going on, trying to make things a little bit healthier while kind of staying in our space.
That has to be difficult. I mean, if your recipes are formulated, to have wheat and gluten-based products in them, that's an important component. I don't understand food science that
Right.
well, but to be able to kind of like hold everything together and then to reformulate, and take like that really important component out, it's got to take, I would guess, a lot of R&D.
It does. It does. And we've got a really good R&D team here that is constantly, tweaking and working on things to ensure that it still tastes good.
Yeah. Well, that's the most important part, right?
Right. Right.
You can get somebody to buy something once, but if you want them coming back, you want that repeat business. It's got to taste good the first time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I, I'm curious if sort of the cross operational experiences that you've had are coming in handy at HB? Kind of your background in welding, has some of the lessons from that been helpful in the things that you're doing now there at HB?
It definitely does. It definitely gives me a different perspective when kind of looking at the way we function operationally. I'm very driven by making sure that equipment is running efficiently and well. Um, we're constantly looking to make sure that we are not um, throwing money at something that isn't worth, kind of keeping running at some points. Um, I think it helps just having that mechanical kind of background to look at things a little bit different. I've worked with a lot of operations guys that are always kind of looking at the number and the final product count, but not kind of realizing what it takes to kind of keep all those numbers where they're at.
So is that also part of your job responsibility, kind of looking at those numbers, driving to the P&L?
I try and keep up with all of our product throughputs, our efficiencies. I'm always trying to look at things to ensure that I do carry a recently received a Six Sigma green belt lead, and so I'm looking at continuous improvement constantly.
That's impressive. Congratulations. Um, and you mentioned working on or towards organic certification. Are you
Well,
guys?
we
You
are
have it
certified.
already?
We've got a lot of products that are certified organic already.
And are
Um,
you able to do those all under the same roof? I'm not sure how the rules work, or do you need like
uh,
a separate production line for that?
so for our gluten-free side of the business, that is totally separate production lines, separate buildings, keep everything segregated. You know, on the certified organic stuff, we generally have some really deep cleans that we do and make sure that nothing is cross contaminated. And
Oh,
we've got
that's
a lot
great.
of checks and balances in place to make sure we're safe.
Yeah. How many folks report to you, JR?
Oh, I mean, I like to say six, but when you're talking the full plant, we're closer to about 150 in operation.
Okay. You guys have one facility?
We've got facilities in Nampa, Idaho. We've got a facility in Cookeville, Tennessee, and we've got a facility in Bullitt.
And which one is it that you're responsible for?
I'm in Nampa,
Okay.
which Nampa is also the site of our kind of corporate headquarters.
And you say six, but really 150. So is that sort of six, and then those six oversee kind of
Yeah,
even more
yeah,
folks? Okay.
right, right.
Got it. And so the folks that report to you, what are their roles?
So it's three production managers, a QC manager. We have a warehouse manager, and a maintenance.
Okay. Let's see. Are there any books, podcasts, or other resources that have been helpful for you, either in personal development or career development, that you might recommend to other folks?
Oh, so many, so many. I could have a list. I'm a big reader, so at the top of my head, I would say Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Covey
Classic.
is probably my top tier favorite. Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin is a really good one. Followed
What's
up
that?
by
What's that one about?
Uh, it's essentially like the title says, learning to take ownership over everything that you have control over and some things that even you don't control. Being able to kind of humble yourself enough to know that, if your team fails, you
Mhm.
being able to really just command and own what you should. Um, I think what gets lost a lot of times with all of us, myself included, sometimes is we have a tendency to, when things go bad, we forget that we're ultimately responsible for those things because we haven't either given the tools, we haven't uh, given the feedback necessary, or we haven't followed through on our end with some. So just for me, it was a really kind of eye-opening book. It's also centered around, kind of they were both Navy SEALs, so it's a lot of you know, kind of how it applies in the military, how it applies in the real world, and some real life scenarios and things in business.
Yeah.
It's a great book.
And then you were starting to mention another one in there before I jumped in.
Oh yeah, they also wrote a follow up to that called Dichotomy of Leadership, which is another fantastic kind of view of kind of the two sides that you got to be when you're a high level leader. You have to be the bad guy, but you can't be so bad that.
And so, what's it like for you when you have to be the bad guy? How do you approach
Uh,
that?
I just try to be as respectful as possible, and I want to talk facts. I don't see it as I don't try to ever look at it as completely negative. I'm trying to offer feedback to get somebody to be as successful as they can. Not everyone accepts that feedback all the time, and ultimately people do not succeed always. But for me, it's always an opportunity for me to kind of talk to somebody and have them learn, exactly where they stand. Again, I think on the extreme ownership side, you do have to own both the good and the bad. So myself included, if somebody's offering me feedback and it's not something that I want to hear, I'm not going to be happy about it. But I respect it enough to understand that is their belief, and sometimes that is on me to change that belief.
And I think this is actually a good point to kind of do a little segue on because, getting that sort of constructive or even critical feedback isn't always easy to hear. But when we're able to drop our guard and not be so defensive about it, it can be an incredible opportunity for growth. Can you think of a time in your working past where that came up? Somebody came to you with some feedback that, man, wasn't what you wanted to hear, but you look back now and you're pretty grateful for it.
Um, wow, that's a great question. I think there have been a few times in my career when I have been offered some feedback when I was pretty defensive in the moment. Particularly, actually, I mentioned him earlier, David Kleist. There was a time at Fresca when we were talking career growth and path and things, and he frankly came up to me and said, "Well, you're not ready. It's not anything you want to hear." I had pretty lofty goals at the time and aspirations, and he was straight, and I respect him for that. That is a very difficult thing to tell somebody, especially when you don't know how that person's going to react. But I look back on it now, and I think that was kind of an even greater motivator for me to get ready and to work on the things that I would like.
Did he give you specific feedback on, hey,
He he
JR, kind of need to work on X, Y, Z?
he did. He was really transparent in my strengths and both my weaknesses. At the time, I was still kind of hot headed and um, to his point, didn't always accept feedback very well, which is something that I've worked on since. I try to always keep an open mind because, as he put it to me then, you don't see it, but other people do, and that generally is bigger than what you think. I mean, perception is unfortunately the reality of most situations.
That's a good way to put it. Perception is the reality for most situations and most people. I'm curious, how did you go about kind of working on some of those things? What did that personal development look like for you?
I started kind of humbling myself and swallowing my ego. I I have a tendency to be a very prideful person, and kind of pushing some of that aside. I also started doing a lot of reading and things to kind of look at some different perspectives and see what I could learn from people that are a lot smarter than I am.
But that's really the key, right? Is
Right.
admitting that there are other folks out there that we've got a lot to learn from. Where does your drive and your work ethic come from? Because I can see sort of the trajectory of all of this. It's like, I had lofty goals. I wanted to get somewhere. I wanted to get there quickly. you've got, some get up and go in you. Is that something you feel like you were just born with? Was it learned along the way?
Uh, you know, um, my dad instilled that in me when I was really, really little. The one thing that I can say that I have learned more than anything from my dad and my mom both is you really sometimes just need to grit your teeth down and do the work. You're not gonna, nobody's gonna save you. Nobody's here to hold your hand. You're gonna work for everything that you're gonna get in this life. If you want some big things, you're gonna have to work.
Hmm. I want to shift gears for a moment, JR, and maybe talk about a serious challenge that you've overcome in your life. Maybe it's personal, maybe it's professional, maybe the two intertwined. How'd you get
Uh,
through it and what did you learn?
um, so full transparency, I was pretty heavy into drugs in my younger years. I'm a recovering addict, been sober for 21-ish years. It it was some of the darkest times I think I've ever seen. I look back on kind of the trajectory of what all that did and some of the anger and things that I had. I did say that my parents were both kind of hard nosed, grit and worked, and I think as a younger guy, I didn't really fully appreciate what they were trying to instill in me, so I kind of rebelled and did some things that I don't want to say that I'm not proud of. I mean, nobody wants to be that, but I have been able to turn the page and look back and think to myself, yeah, if I did that, just sky's the limit. Um, I have to thank my wife as well. I met my wife at a time when I was kind of in the middle of the crossroads, and to this day, I tell her that she saved my life. She was able to kind of calm my thoughts and my kind of wild side enough to see something in me that I didn't see in myself, and that was kind of able to put me in a place where I was able to kind of deal with some things that I needed to deal with, just from, call it trauma, call it whatever, from just past experiences. Um, and I look back on it now, and it is definitely, like I say, probably the hardest thing I've ever done and overcome. Uh, but truthfully, I didn't do it alone. I did it because of my parents. I did it because of my wife. I did it. I had a huge support system, which kind of drives me. Is the one thing that I have learned in this life is that everybody needs somebody in their corner. It
Mm.
doesn't matter how strong a person is. It doesn't matter, what the person has done. Everybody needs an advocate to get to be able to lean on at some point.
What an incredible story there. You met your now wife at a time when, you were still struggling to figure out which way was up. And I mean, she sounds like a real gem, because
Oh, she's amazing. She's amazing. We've been married. It'll be 20 years next March. Um,
and
she,
she was
she's
she was a big part of your getting into recovery and sort of tackling these demons. It
oh
sounds
yeah,
like.
oh yeah. She's by far the one thing I can look at and daily and think, I'm blessed that you are in my life, because if you were not, I may not be here.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Uh, have you been able to take any of that? I mean, what did you say? Everybody needs somebody in their corner, right? You went through this hard time. Thankfully, you didn't have to go through it alone. You had your wife, you had your parents. Are you able to bring any of that sort of philosophy? Everybody needs somebody in their corner to your work environment and how
Oh,
you
absolutely.
approach your
Yeah.
employees?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very much now driven. Kind of that's kind of my drive, and I want to make sure that everybody around me does. I want to be that advocate for anybody that I'm working with, anybody that I'm reporting to, reports to me, reports under me. I want to make sure that everybody has that one person that they can turn to and help them accomplish whatever goal they have. And that, whether it's professional, personal, whatever.
How does that show up for you on a day-to-day basis?
Just like my company, I'm very relationship driven. I want, I check in constantly to see where, how my guys are doing, how the people on the floor are doing. I am constantly making sure that, my values align with their goals so that we have a mutual kind of win-win attitude when it comes to what we're trying to accomplish. I ultimately know that for me to be successful, they have to be successful, and vice versa. So
Are you a parent? You have any kids?
I am. I am. I have two little girls,
How old are they?
so 10 and 9.
Okay. Uh, how do you try to teach them some of these lessons? Need somebody in your corner, the sort of the grit and the determination. Like,
Um, I'm very much I sometimes look at it. I think I'm a lot like my parents were with me at times, where I'm very kind of to the point and I like to say that I'm a realist. I don't try and sugarcoat things with them. I try to be as honest with them as I can about kind of everything under the sun that I can that's appropriate. I mean, there's some things they ask me that I'm not ready to have a conversation about. Um, and then I just, try to be as consistent as I can and spend as much time with them as I can. Let them know that regardless of what comes up, we're a team and we're going to get through whatever it takes. All of it, not just.
I'm someone who believes in the power of daily practices. Do you have any habits or daily rituals that you go through that are kind of an essential part of your day?
I do. I do. I have a general timeline. I'm a very much a creature of habit. I, get up every morning. Um, generally we have a home gym that we've started. So, I'll hit the gym 4 or 5 in the morning, work out for an hour or so, get ready for my day. Um, we'll get here, kind of do some things here, but, my drive is to be out on the floor, within a couple hours of getting here and just making sure that try and say good morning to everybody that I see. Sometimes a good morning is all somebody needs
Yeah.
to have a better day.
Mm.
By the time I end my day, I'll go home and the first thing I do is just, go and make sure that my girls had a good day, kiss the wife, let her know that I missed her. And um, then we spend some time together and just kind of do the family thing. I say I'm a pretty normal guy. Just have my little quirks and things, like I say, a mental timeline of things getting done throughout my day just to make sure that I'm on track.
If we were to talk a year from now, JR, and you're celebrating something, what would you hope that is?
Uh, I mean, I know I'll be celebrating my 20th year anniversary with the wife.
That's a big one.
It is. It is. We've been looking for a while at it. Originally there was a plan of us maybe having a big wedding. We didn't have a wedding when we got married. We just kind of eloped. And, there had been talk about having a wedding. I think that we've kind of both decided that, kind of everything that recently happened in our personal life is maybe we're not going to do the wedding per se, but I think we're going to definitely still look at doing a vow.
Some kind of a celebration?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Do you want to give voice to anything that you're referencing there, things that have happened recently?
Uh, just as we spoke earlier, my mom recently passed away from complications due to liver. Been a hard, month
Yeah.
on that for a little bit.
I'm sorry to hear that, JR. What have you found has given you strength? What have you been able to lean on during this challenging time?
You know, the work was amazing. They really allowed me to be there for my family. I had to leave on kind of an emergency time and was out for a little bit. I mean, they didn't blink an eye.
Yeah.
My my team that I work with um, has been a supportive, and my wife has been amazing. We've got a really big support system that has been
That's
really
great.
amazing and helping.
Yeah, that's terrific. Um, as you look back, what do you think was the best decision you ever made for your career and why?
Um, Honestly, going back to school and getting my degree in welding has been probably the biggest godsend. I worked in a manufacturing plant making windows for 7 years previous to that, and one day decided that I needed to do more. So we kind of did the scary thing and quit work and went back to school. And it's it's been great since. I mean, it allowed me to kind of hit every goal that I've kind of set for myself up to this point.
Any advice for folks that are listening that there's something that they're afraid to do, sort of take that big next step, and the fear is just kind of blocking them at the moment?
Definitely, at some point, you definitely have to face that fear head on. Um, as scary as it may be, uh, you have to find that guiding light to kind of get you through the struggle and the hard time that you may face in the short term. But ultimately, the the end of the road, it's everything that you hope it can be, and most of the time, even for me, it was more than I thought it would. I mean,
Yeah.
it has been.
You're talking about courage. I know that innovation oftentimes requires a dose of courage. Is there something maybe at HB or even before where you had to kind of, face fear and be a little bit courageous to introduce an innovation into the workplace?
um yeah, I mean, I think here at HB, I've definitely been a proponent of changing some things culture wise and just in the way we do things day to day. That has it's been met always with positive feedback and things, but just being able to kind of put myself out there and speak up on the things that I feel. That's definitely.
Yeah. What's one thing that you wish more people understood about your industry, JR?
Um, what we do, we oftentimes get asked, you know, what exactly do you guys do? And I try to give people the kind of high level answer of we make batters and coatings and things, but there's it's amazing to me after working here, the last 2.5, 3 years, how much effort goes into everyday items that people take for granted.
My boys are going to eat some chicken nuggets tonight that probably have an ingredient that you guys produced and French fries with it
Uh,
too. And
Almost certainly,
and
almost
we
certainly.
we never think about it. It's there in the bag. I have no idea how many people or different companies got involved in making that come into our freezer and into our dinner
Right,
table.
right. It's definitely eye opening. It was eye opening for me, even coming from a similar industry, coming here and kind of truly understanding what goes into everything that something as simple as a coating.
Right?
And you call it a simple coating, but I mean,
It's
I know,
anything but.
yeah, I know different. I mean, it takes quite a bit.
Yeah. What's something you enjoy doing outside of work?
I'm an outdoors guy. I like being up camping, fishing, hunting. Haven't been hunting in a while, but I do really enjoy being outdoors. Anything near water, I love.
What do you like to
Uh,
hunt?
it's been a while, but Bird. So we'll do duck hunting or pheasant is fun.
No. I've just got one more question for you, JR. But before I
Yes,
ask it, I
sir.
want to do two things. I want to invite everybody who's listening today to go ahead and hit the follow button on their favorite podcast app so you can continue to get more great interviews like we've had today with JR Rodriguez from HB Specialty Foods. JR, I also want to let people know either the best way to get in touch with you or to follow your story or that of HB Specialty Foods. What would that be?
You know, our website's a great resource for what we're doing. Definitely in the process of maybe doing some things there to make it user friendly. There has been some high level talks of doing some things to kind of really put a better understanding of our process out there. As far as myself, you know, I have a LinkedIn that people can contact me on. I can't even remember the name of it right now. I think it's like JR Rodriguez 81.
We'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile on the show notes,
Okay.
and same for the company website, which we'll also give voice to now, hbspecialtyfoods.com. Last question I have for you, JR. As you look to the future of HB Specialty Foods in the next, call it 2 to 3 years, what are some of the most exciting changes that you see coming?
Oh, just so many. You know, we're aggressively looking to grow our business. With a lot of that comes obviously a lot of major change, new challenges that present themselves um, as some of those growth headaches kind of manifest. And again, we're actively seeking new opportunities in our space. So there will be new product launches and lines and things that we're working on.
Any acquisitions that you think might happen, or is this going to all kind of happen ground up internally?
I think a majority of it is going to be ground up internally.
Okay.
You know, we are looking at expanding our business in our current three sites, and then you know outside of that, it just kind of depends on how the ball keeps rolling.
Yeah. I don't know that this would apply in the role that you're in, but a lot of my guests love to talk about how they're dabbling in or using AI in some manner. Has that hit your radar at all yet?
Very little. You know, we will use some of the AI platforms for brainstorming. We've recently done that, but across my individual day to day, not much.
Yeah. That makes sense. Very much operational and dealing with, physical equipment and making sure that it's up and running and the folks are doing what they need to do.
Right.
Yeah. Well, JR Rodriguez, I want to be the first one to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.